Alright, so back, of course, talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth. We're back to look at some more interviews, the same old shit we've been doing for like months now, it feels like. We have two interviews specifically. We have a Destructoid interview, and we have a German Eurogamer interview with like Hamaguchi and Kitase. And there's interesting bits from both of them, so let's just hop into it. Do you feel certain pressure when it comes to this one big scene? Do you just let it happen by seeing what works in the game, or do you tell yourself that you absolutely have to get this right? Of course, we take this very seriously and definitely not lightly. We know how important this scene is, what significance it has for the entire trilogy. Our team of developers takes not just this one scene very seriously, but everything that leads up to it. We try to figure out exactly what works best. Mr. Kitase already mentioned that we follow the original plot because everything is based on the history of that time. But we are also thinking about how we can expand it to arouse curiosity in the players. And one element that we tried to achieve in Remake that left players wondering how the story would continue and whether the ending would be as they remembered. That element was the mysterious ghost, Whispers, the Gardens of Fate, so to speak. These characters suggest that one can change fate. They make you think about what is possible. In addition, we also use the appearance of Zack to give the impression that things may turn out differently than you remember. And perhaps you also ask yourself how exactly this world actually works, why things happen the way they do, and focus on the fundamental principles of this reality. When the players finally arrive at this one scene, having seen all the different elements, including the ghost, Zack, and so on, and then actually not knowing what exactly is going to happen, that's the kind of curiosity and tension that we want to create. So yeah, it's a bit of reading, but I want to kind of get through all that, and then we can talk about it. But yeah, they're talking about how Aerith's fate, essentially, at the end of Rebirth, and that the introduction of the Whispers in Remake, and Zack surviving can kind of make you think that things could change, and maybe she will survive this time. Now, whether or not she does, that remains to be seen. We've talked about that a lot, obviously, here lately. Brought this up in the previous video, I believe, but there's a statement, I believe, from Nomura, maybe Kitase, I don't remember, kind of teasing like a cliffhanger ending for Rebirth, kind of similar to Remake, right? They want that kind of same appeal, that same like discussion for, I guess, the next couple of years until the third game comes out. So what's that going to be? And I said in that video that one of two scenarios is probably going to happen, but there's probably more, because kind of any character could theoretically die if they want to do something like cliffhangery or whatever. But it's either Aerith dies and then something else happens afterwards to kind of grip the audience and get them discussing and talking. I don't know what that could be. That could be a million different things. Or Aerith lives and that's your cliffhanger, because it's like, what the hell happens now if Aerith's alive, right? But we've also talked about on the channel other characters dying, like Tifa and Cloud, for example. And I know people don't want to hear that and don't think it's possible, and it's probably not very likely, but I think anything's technically possible. Well, I do think like another character dying is like a decent swerve, because you're not really going to expect it. Like, we can talk about it and theorize on it, but nobody's really expecting that to happen. So it'd be kind of crazy if they went that route. Like, you're expecting Aerith to die. It's like, Aerith's going to live. Is Aerith going to die? And it's like, maybe it has nothing to do with her. Maybe this time Sephiroth kills somebody else to like really fuck you up. I don't know who it'd be. Like, if he did kill Tifa, theoretically, I know Tifa stands, don't want to hear that. But if he did kill Tifa, that'd be a hell of a cliffhanger. It's like, what the fuck do we do now? Like, how there's no Tifa? What the fuck? What do we do? Or Cloud, like, if you just randomly kill Cloud for some reason at the end of Rebirth, right? Like, what would we do? What would we be thinking going into the third game if Cloud is supposed to be dead based on the ending of Rebirth? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if this is like just kind of like a retelling of FF7, not sort of like a sequel or anything like that, taking place after having children and shit, then Sephiroth doesn't have an attachment to Cloud, right? There's not the Lifestream Black stuff. Like, Sephiroth could kill Cloud and it wouldn't kill him, right? So, like, it's a possibility. Like, it's there. Are the odds likely? Probably not, but I'm just saying it's there. So the last part that I really liked with Hamaguchi talking about, not knowing what's going to happen and wanting to create that, like, tension and people, second-guessing whether or not Aerith will die this time around, and that sort of thing, right? And I try to get that point across a lot in my videos here lately, that's what the devs want. Like, regardless of what you see online, because a lot of people, if you talk about things changing, they'll attack you, and it's stupid, and they're not changing anything. It's just FF7. They're not changing anything at all or whatever. But it's like, they want you to do that. Like, the director of the game wants you to talk about it. He wants you to think, going into Forgotten Capital, when we walk in there, following Aerith if she runs away from us like she did in the original FF7, they want you to go in there thinking it's actually possible that she survives. Now, whether she does or doesn't is irrelevant. It's just that they want you to speculate on that. As we're talking about Aerith's fate, might as well mention it again like I did in the previous video, but Aerith doesn't need to die in Forgotten Capital. Like, she successfully summons Holy in the original FF7, and then she dies, right? But she can die at kind of any point and be within the planet, be within the live stream to like help Holy defeat Meteor, right? If that's what's going to happen in the remake story. There's no reason she necessarily needs to die at Forgotten Capital, unless maybe like dying there and being buried there like also helps her connection to the planet or something, because it's like her people's home or whatever. Like, that could matter, I guess, to a certain degree. But just kind of as like a broad thing, like, she can just die kind of at any point and help us from the planet, like, in theory anyways. If I just had to like give my thoughts on the end of Rebirth and what I think is going to happen with Aerith, like, I think the odds are decent she survives. I'm not going to say that it's more likely she lives than she does die. Maybe like a 60-40 split. 60 that she dies, 40 that she lives, or maybe 70-30, something along those lines. But I think there's a decent chance to kind of swerve us, because I just don't see the point of like the whole Whisperer stuff and Zack, if he is alive, like the point of Zack being alive and all the future visions, there being Cloud was shown the vision of like Aerith dying like 3 or 4 times in Remake, right? And I still see the point of all that if it just plays out the same. Like, also, you have like the whole breaking away from Destiny shit that we've talked about a lot here lately. Even the recap video we kind of reacted to and discussed recently for Remake, like Red 13 mentions towards the end of that video like 4, 5, 6 times about breaking away from Destiny and changing fate and fate not being able to follow them and all that other shit. But also like the payoff of these visions, right? Even if our group doesn't entirely understand the visions in the moment, there has to be some sort of payoff going forward for them being shown those visions. And like, if you can see the future, you can change the future. Like, that's the idea. That's the theory, right? I don't know, man. I know it's kind of repetitive. We've kind of talked about the same shit a lot here lately, but all we really have to do with like Rebirth right now is like interviews. And the interviews tend to ask like similar or very same questions, and you get sometimes like similar answers from the devs, right? Just talking about things changing. Oh, but we want you to think there can be changes. Oh, but things aren't changing. And it's just like, it's going to get my 2 cents on it, I guess. You guys know what I think at this point, I suppose. With Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, players will get to explore more open-ended fields and pursue optional objectives. How did you decide on what kind of side quests to include in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? The 2 major side content elements are odd jobs and world intel. Odd job side quests are standard side quests that can be found in most games where the player receives a request from a client and ventures off to resolve it. However, to ensure each quest is distinct, they feature exclusive minigames and gimmicks. In World Intel, you're basically asked by Chadley to investigate points of interest around the world to help develop materia. However, World Intel is much more than just that. As you investigate each region, the adventure unfolds into a much larger story that spans the entire world, and this comprehensive scale is one of its core appeals. So I always like that last scene where they talk about there being like a story element to the Chadley stuff in the game, which is pretty cool, because with the first game with Remake, you get a little bit on Chadley, but there's not really like a story. You're just kind of, you're doing all the VR shit or whatever, all the missions for him to like develop material. And that's kind of it. That's the story, and you get a little bit of the story if you do everything for him, right? Where he talks about being created by Hojo. But now there's like going to be like a narrative reason for why we're doing stuff with Chadley if you do all of it. What it's going to be, I don't know. A lot of people think that he's going to be like a bad guy, which I think is very possible. He's created by Hojo, so I could see like this swerve at some point, either in Rebirth or the third game. We find out like all along we've been hoping Hojo or some shit through Chadley. The story's going to be exactly, I don't know, because we're just gathering battle intel, we're activating towers around the world. We know it's like the English version of like the TGS presentation, like the gameplay or whatever. He talks about them being like towers are created by like Junon or the Republic of Junon or something like that, and that they were made around the time of the war, and they've just kind of sat there for a long time now. So I don't know. He talks about like if the more towers we open up or whatever or activate, they'll make this like processing power go up. I don't know. It kind of leans in favor a bit of like the bad guy Chadley, because it seems like in theory we're going to be making him stronger as we keep like activating towers, right? So I could see like a Chadley fight at some point. Maybe he's not even a bad guy. Maybe it's like a friendly fight. He just wants to test his capabilities against us or some shit. I don't know. Final Fantasy VII has a history of surprising players. For example, I can still remember first seeing that there was an entire world outside Midgar when I first played Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy VII Remake took a new direction with a story that gave new meaning to the word remake. Is there an aspect of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that you hope similarly surprises fans? No spoilers, of course. The 7 Remake project titles, including Rebirth, were developed with 2 ideas in mind in terms of their core appeal. The first is recreating what could not be expressed in the original FF7, using modern techniques to make the audience aware of things they previously didn't notice, therefore providing an element of fresh surprise. In the demo, the personality of young Cloud during the Nibelheim flashback was received incredibly well by fans and media alike, and similar to that, we put in a lot of care to recreate certain scenes with increased realism, which allows for additional layers of discovery without changing the fundamental experience of those scenes. The second are the deviations from the original game. Overall, we wanted the player to follow the familiarity of how this game progresses in the same way as the original, while still picking up on the subtle differences in certain details, which are meant to keep the player on the edge of their seats, speculating what those deviations might mean for the story's climax. The previous title, The Whispers, played this narrative role, whereas this time around, Zack also joins in. He will certainly entertain and wrangle the player in the best way possible. Both of these 2 elements are scattered all throughout Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and will surely provide many surprises for fans. So yeah, that first part where he talks about like adding detail or recreating stuff with like the modern techniques to add detail to stuff that you couldn't really express with the original FF7 back then with the technology and stuff, like that's something I'm excited for, man. I can't wait to like revisit familiar locations, places that I've visited 100 times in my fucking life, but it's going to be astronomically different because it's like a modern interpretation, but also it's like a 3D thing. You're not walking on like an image or whatever. Like you walk, Calm, for example. Calm looks so good, dude. It looks like the most like perfect fucking RPG village kind of town, right? I can't wait to walk around Calm. I'm gonna spend multiple hours probably in Calm, just kind of walk around and checking out everything. And very similarly to like all the other locations, right? I'm gonna walk around Junon forever and Rocket Town and Cosmo King and etc. etc. I can't wait to just like exist in this world, man. I don't care about the fucking story of the gameplay right now. At this point, I just want to walk around Gaia. I just want to walk around all the different towns and familiar locations, man. I just cannot wait. Like the second part is just kind of reiterating the importance of Zack and the possibility of changes because of Zack, etc., etc. We've talked about it enough. It's kind of my dudes. Just want to put something out. It's been a few days, and obviously it's Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. I'm obviously not going to upload tomorrow. I just want to talk about some FF7 Rebirth a little bit, but at this point, like I've said before, we're just kind of spinning our tires, waiting for something kind of major. The Game Awards can't come here fast enough because presumably that's where we're going to get the next trailer or whatever, the next thing for this game. We're just kind of tired of reading. I just want to talk about the game. I want to look at the game. I want to talk about the game. I want to break down the game. I'm just kind of tired of looking at interviews, but it's kind of all we got right now. Anyways, that is the video. I'm going to do. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.